Hey, financial freedom seekers. I've been searching for a new name for the community, and the name financial freedom seekers seem to be a word that unifies why people watch this. Today, we're going to be talking about the hearing and on the use of cryptocurrencies for illicit activities. If you did not know, there was a hearing a few days back, and that's where a bunch of people engaged in the crypto community, whether it be people that run tracking software for cryptocurrencies, or exchange operators in Ukraine, and lawmakers and officials in the United States, all met in order to discuss cracking down and what the opportunities are for the illicit activities in cryptocurrencies. So, firstly, what do you think of the new name for the community? Financial freedom seekers. I was calling you YouTubers before. No one identified with that. I think we're unified around a common understanding that we are here for financial freedom, whether that be you're in a country where you have no freedom to transact, and therefore you want some freedom to transact, or maybe you are seeking wealth and you're looking for fixed digital hard sound money as a mechanism to combat inflation and currencies that are deflated in value that make you work harder and create a world's largest regulated Ponzi scheme and wealth inequality. Or maybe you just simply want the ability to own your own money because you don't want to risk your savings on the counterparty called a bank that doesn't have enough money, and then you end up in a situation for geopolitics, queuing outside your bank, trying to exchange the digital currency that the bank created for some cash that the government created, and realizing that it doesn't exist and the supply is not there. So I believe that financial freedom seekers is a unifying term. Let me know in the comment section what you think of that term. And we're going to jump into illicit activities. Now, firstly, I could give you a summary of everything that was covered, and there's really just two sides to the argument. The one side of the argument is that criminals can use cryptocurrencies. Is that true? Yes, it's true. By giving everybody the ability to own their own money, spend their own money, and have a money that has a fixed supply, then criminals and non-criminals and corrupt officials and non-corrupt officials and central banks and ordinary people and people that have no bank accounts in the streets can all use cryptocurrencies. So there's no denying that. So we could do a bunch of statistics around how a minute percentage of those that use cryptocurrencies are using it for crime, and we could give the counter argument that it actually creates new tools for law enforcement to use, and that was really the nooks and crannies of the debate. There are two sides to this. There's a yin and yang, just like anything. There are two sides to the argument. So what does it do? Well, by giving everyone the ability to own their own money, spend their own money, and have money that benefits from a fixed supply, what we have tended to see is that criminals use it in a very bad way because they're fiat thinkers. And so what criminals tend to do is they tend to come up with a new scam in order to either launch a new cryptocurrency and then rug pull all the money out, or they use it as a mechanism for doing things that shouldn't be crime. Just my opinion, but from my perspective, if you want to tackle the war on drugs, then just let people use drugs if they choose, and decide to regulate the industry so that they're not injecting themselves with poison, much like some countries were mandating during the recent pandemic for other forms of things that society has decided that it's okay to inject themselves with. I'm here for freedom of choice. I believe that that is a choice that people should make, and if you want to tackle the war on drugs, then just simply allow drugs to trade in a free market, and then you can tackle that one. But anyway, that's just my perspective, and I don't want to inflict that into the argument. The fact is that yes, people can purchase drugs, so they can take crime off the streets and not risk meeting a drug dealer that is going to give them whatever product they say they have in supply that could be filled with all sorts of chemicals that were not in there, with no rating system and no review system. and therefore you can take all the war on drugs back onto the street, make it more dangerous for people, rather than reducing crime by allowing people to transact online. You can use that as a reason to say cryptocurrencies are bad. The next thing that it was talking about is the crimes that really are bad. Things like enabling human trafficking, enabling terrorism, and that could be the definition of terrorism in the US, or it could be the definition of terrorism in other countries where US foreign policy and putting military bases in your country through IMF loans is considered to some people an act of terrorism as well. But I'm talking about the US definition of terrorism because we're in a US in a US hearing here. And so obviously those bad things can be used by people that use cryptocurrency. But here's the thing that they tend to do. Firstly, they tend what happens when you use cryptocurrency is you can use it anonymously, but you have to on-ramp and off-ramp somewhere. So either you go into a cash market and figure out how to exchange your cash for cryptocurrency, or you have to use some kind of exchange or peer-to-peer market. And on a peer-to-peer market, it doesn't necessarily scale to the level of which ginormous criminal organizations can fund, but the crypto industry will grow and grow and grow. I believe the demand for money you can own, money you can spend, and money that has a fixed supply goes up. But here's the thing: as soon as you engage in a cryptocurrency transaction, you firstly have to on and off ramp, which means you need to go to an exchange, and when you go to an exchange, they are regulated by all the anti-money laundering obligations, know your customer obligations, source of funds, source of wealth, transaction monitoring, and all the things that regulated institutions like the one that I co-founded has to adhere to, otherwise they go in prison or they get fined large chunks of money, and therefore law enforcement, they tend to subpoena that data, and if they can use it for crime prevention, or the tax authorities can use it to try and get their cut as well. And so this happens on the on and off ramps. Get used to it. There is no lobbying it. This is the way the world goes. This is the way that financial institutions operate. There's no way of reversing those laws. Those laws are getting harsher and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger over time. Anytime you transact in your fiat currency or on and off ramp from fiat to cryptocurrency, you are going to have to go through the incredible headache and pain and frustration that all of us hate, holding up a selfie, putting it with our identity documents and everything else that is required by law. There's no real way around that, other than transacting in the decentralized environment. Now, when you transact in the decentralized environment, no identity, but you create a digital footprint of what you do. Now, obviously, lots of services exist in order to obfuscate those transactions by putting it into an exchange that may not be complying to a high enough standard, or they use mixing services and decentralized exchanges and chain hopping and all sorts of stuff like that. But this is exactly what happens in the fiat world. In the fiat world, layering of money laundering is an activity that happens. In the fiat world, you rely upon banks filing suspicious activity reports and financial institutions filing suspicious activity reports by law, and if they don't file them, they get fined or in the extreme go to prison. With the blockchain world, it's just a lot more efficient. There's a digital footprint of everything, but the identity is anonymized. So what criminals may be doing is they're creating digital footprints that eventually, maybe not in the end, create a digital footprint, and then if they decide that they want to spend that as fiat or interact with traditional financial institutions, then they have to do the same money laundering operations that they would at a bank. So it is exactly the same thing, but you just get this additional digital footprint. Now, what's the advantage of that? The advantage of that is that innocent people not committing crime, get the ability to own their own money, spend their own money, and have a fixed money supply, and then they can transact. And a big focus of the hearing was talking about how Ukraine needed money, and cryptocurrency was the fastest and most efficient way of getting money from those that wanted to send money, because it reflected their values of what they actually believe. So what is the key message here? The key message here is that if you are a criminal, and I know that the term criminal is also a very debated, what is a crime in one country might not be a crime in another, and what some people consider a crime is freedom for another, and those debates will not change. Those debates still exist whether cryptocurrency is here, but it's kind of like saying that criminals use the internet, and therefore the solution to that is we either embrace the internet, accept that there's a new world, try and navigate the new tools and opportunities that come from that, and use the internet for the things that we think are really good. Or you could just say, let's get rid of this sector, which means that you give the opportunity to another country that does embrace it, that does things right. So game theory always prevails. So game theory wins. It's why I'm not as scared as many people that don't buy Bitcoin because they think governments are going to ban it and therefore it's going to go to zero. The adoption rate, the opportunities, the benefits far outweigh, from my perspective, those that want to commit crime using it and then create a digital footprint that later can come back to bite them in the ass. And so what is the most important thing that I would like to get to my financial freedom seeking community? So we all know the arguments, or if you're new to it, then I hope you learned something. If you enjoyed it, hit like, hit subscribe, hit the bell symbol, hit all. But here's a message that I think we can all learn from. One of my biggest criticisms of humanity, let's call it, is their lack of ability to see the other side of the world, to enter somebody else's world and to understand that we all come from different perspectives based upon our backgrounds and beliefs. And one of the worst things that we can do as humanity that leads to more war and destruction than anything is only see one side of the picture. It's why I don't fully, it makes me very, very suspicious when the traditional media, and you turn on the television, is just painting one argument to the war right now, which is that Putin is Hitler. Now, while that may be true, he may be completely evil, and he may be the Hitler, I also believe that I would like to understand the other side to that perspective, because writing my book at the moment, and I would want to investigate the role that the International Monetary Fund had in financing certain activities in Ukraine. I'm not trying to create conspiracy theories here, but I would like to know the information. I would also like to know what role NATO has had in Ukraine, and how that may have antagonized certain actions. And if those conversations are censored, just like during the pandemic, the conversation was inject, 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 and Pfizer and AstraZeneca were cells, and everybody was lining up in fear because there was a death counter on the TV. I would also like to know the alternative around why we should start looking at boosting our immunity. And I personally was affected by people that said the vaccine led to their blood clot and the death of them as well. And so if we're censored from those conversations, then we don't get to see the other side. How does that relate to the illicit activities and hearing? Well, look at the war as well at the moment. I would love to appreciate and understand that I just don't buy the argument that there is just one thing, which is Putin is evil. And again, Putin may be completely evil. I have my opinions on that I'm not airing here. Putin could be, but I do believe that there is two complete sides to this argument, and we deserve to understand the other side. Now, here's what we tend to do as humans. We create echo chambers of our own beliefs in order to reinforce our beliefs, because we have something in our brain called a reticular activating system. And the reticular activating system is the part of your brain that deletes irrelevant information, because if you focused on all the information that is presented to you, you would go insane. For example, right now you could focus on the pulse in your ear, or the blood going through your arms, or the noise in the background that your ears deleted. And if you focus on all the infinite possibilities and billions of data points, then your brain wouldn't be able to function. So it has this thing called a reticular activating system, which deletes all information that we believe to be irrelevant to our current way of functioning. And we do this with information. So when I watch things like illicit activities and cryptocurrency, I don't watch it from the perspective of everything you say, I'm going to tear down and crucify and give you a counterexample of how crypto is good and all this type of stuff. I'm listening from the perspective of entering their world so that we can actually further the conversation, and we can further the bad parts that can come from certain technological innovation, and try it on for size to see if there is any merit to other people's perspectives in the world. And I have found that this makes you a much better investor. It gives you more conviction when you try on different things for size. So when you see, the classic example, and we do it very much in the Bitcoin community, is, we channel our reticular activating system to delete all information we don't want to see, and channel all information that we do want to see in order to reinforce our beliefs, which gives us the lack of opportunity to empathize and see the other side of the world. The world is yin and yang. Every innovation comes with pros and cons. We have this constant evolution of technology and innovation, and with it brings opportunities and things. I created a video recently how money is a knife, a drug, and a lethal injection. Check out that video on the YouTube channel if you want to understand a bit more about why and the topic. And so that is my message that I think we can all learn from. We don't want to be Peter Schiff. Peter Schiff is the guy that had the same ideology as the Bitcoin community. Very early on, he told his investors not to invest in Bitcoin. They crucified him as it became the highest performing asset class in history. And then no matter what happens, he tries to find a reason why Bitcoin, no matter how far it progresses, no matter how big it becomes, he's always taking the gold side of the argument and thinking that it's gold versus Bitcoin, not realizing that gold is the world's best wealth preserver, and Bitcoin has become one of the world's greatest and fastest growing wealth creators. Because it performs some of the things that gold can't perform, and gold performs some of the things that Bitcoin can't perform. And so taking this black and white picture of the world, I believe, makes you a worse investor because you have a lack of ability to see the other side. So in every action, whether it be pandemic, I want to see both sides. Whether it be a war, I want to see both sides. Whether it want to be a hearing around illicit activities in Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, I want to hear both sides, because it is only through both sides that we get to genuinely have an appreciation and a conviction that we can then use to make and channel our money in the ways that we want to do. And I do believe that money you can own, money you can spend, and money that has a fixed supply creates opportunities for individuals, for countries, for companies, for central banks, and also for criminals. And so then it is the question of, this innovation exists. We can either give it all to another country and lose the opportunity, or we can embrace the brave new world and the new reality that we live in and figure out how to put that into my map of the world. And remember, everybody has a job description. The president is there to protect the dollar, protect the national interest, and if they're corrupt, protect their own interests. But everyone has a job description, and it may not be the same job description as you. My job description is to further financial inclusion and give for more financial freedom to individuals, companies, and countries that want to embrace the new world that we live in and protect themselves and build and protect their wealth in a vastly and rapidly changing financial system, where we are in the world's largest regulated Ponzi scheme, and we have options for those that want to opt out. So I hope this was at least inspiring, useful conversation. I'd love to hear in the comment section below what you think, what your perspective is, And have you ever found yourself constantly seeking an echo chamber to reinforce your own beliefs without seeking the alternative? And what's the emotional feeling you get when people confront your beliefs? Do you embrace it as a learning experience that can then reinforce your convictions? Or do you see it as an attack that you must delete the information, and therefore you become narrow-minded and you end up with the Peter Schiff of Bitcoin, or you end up with the one perspective of the world, that Putin is Hitler, or that NATO caused this, or that Ukraine is this, or that people are this, or men are this, or women are that, and you develop these global beliefs that cut out the nuance and the opportunity to learn that there is mass complexity in many of these scenarios. So check out the, if you've got 2 hours and you want to see the different perspectives, it's a learning experience to see how different people perceive different opportunities. But here's the one thing I do know. You cannot uninvent the fact that we now have digital hard sound money, Bitcoin, and you can't change the fact that people can own their own money, spend their own money, and have a fixed supply, regardless of geopolitics, regardless of borders. And if you want to remove that opportunity from your country, then you will be defending the fax machine as the internet prevails and the internet grows. And eventually you will have to have a hearing on how to reverse that decision, because you are no longer on top of the financial system and how it is evolving and prevailing based upon the human inventions to try and further and give people the ability to own their money, spend their own money, and have digital hard sound money as an alternative to much of the central bank digital currency control and innovation that's going to be happening in the traditional financial system as a result of trying to catch the bad guys, trying to collect more tax, trying to stay on top of geopolitics. And I want to make sure that you are on the right side of financial history and you do not affiliate yourself necessarily just with your country's agenda, because my personal perspective is that patriotism is a great divider and a glorified form of racism in many perspectives when you use it and channel it in the wrong direction. A knife can cut you, or a knife can be used as a great tool to support you eating your food. And so there are two sides to that argument, and always remember, you are alive at one of the most interesting and exciting times in financial history. Subscribe to this channel, like this channel, share this video, hit the bell symbol, hit the all symbol. YouTube will email you every time we go live, and I'll keep from my gym giving you a quick update after my workout on what's happening in the financial system so that you can stay on the right side of the change with peace, with love, with unity. I'm going to see you later. Peace.